us how the panel went. Well, nerves for everybody, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you know, I always have so much fun at these things, and for sure I'm always nervous too, but this was different. I mean, obviously the show touched a nerve, and I've been kind of the poster child for a lot of what's being said, and I felt like I needed to address it for sure. I want to face this head on, and so it definitely changed the vibe of the panel. But I think it was important. I think it was an important thing for us to do.
I think you said that if you could do it over again, you would have done it differently. How would you have written that? I'm curious what creative idea you came up with.
Well, I was talking about, there's 3 areas I think that I would do differently. One is the way that I talked about the show on Twitter. I feel like it set up an expectation, certainly like an implicit promise for people that Lexa would make it and she would have a happy ending. And to me, you know, the only real promise I've ever made about the show is that I will tell the best story I can and that nobody in that story is safe. And yet my Twitter behavior, I think, created a different expectation, and that has certainly led to, I think it impacted the situation in a way that it made it worse for people, you know, because they believed that it was going to end differently, and it didn't. And anyway, so that's one thing I would do differently. Creatively, within the episode itself, you know, it's tricky because the 2 areas that I pointed to, first of all, I would have still written her off that way, but I would have done it differently in the sense of, you know, the sex and death came so close together, and I'm conscious of the sort of optics of that being uncomfortable, and, you know, for me it meant it didn't have anything to do with, one didn't have anything to do with the other, but I know that it, in some people's minds, it did, and so I wish I could have come up with a way to separate them. I mean, the truth is, you know, in my mind, they couldn't have had sex earlier because she wasn't ready, and it would have been unearned in the season, I mean, and later, obviously, for obvious reasons, she couldn't. And so it came down to, it was either in episode 7 or it was not going to happen at all. I do wish, though, that I could have come up with a way to thread that needle better, because I understand that increased people's pain. And then the other thing is the stray bullet. I think I talked about this a little bit on the panel, I'm not sure, but, you know, I was trying to make a very different point than I think the fans seem to want. They wanted her to have a heroic death because she's a hero, and, you know, on the one hand, we don't really do big heroic battlefield death. You know, I don't want to say we never have or we never will, but, you know, I don't like to glorify violence. There's a lot of violence in the show, of course, but for me, it's more about self-sacrificial acts. You know, that could have been a way that we went. I chose to tell a story of the fragility of life, and that anybody, even someone as powerful as her, could walk into the wrong door at the wrong time and get killed. And that was the sort of Greek tragedy of it, the sort of, and you know, the thing I wish I could do differently is, had I known about the trope more than I did, had I studied it, I would have come upon the fact that in Buffy, a lesbian died by a stray bullet in a very similar way, at a very similar time, I'm told. And so I would have loved to have known that, so I could have, you know, moved those pieces around differently while still making the same point that life is fragile. And then my reaction afterwards, you know, was the third thing that I wish I could have done differently.